Hello everyone, welcome to this video. Before we begin, don't forget to hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe. Okay, let's dive right into the discussion. In this video, we will discuss the journey of corporate governance, starting from ancient trade practices to modern regulatory systems. Corporate governance refers to the system by which companies are directed and controlled. It ensures that corporations operate in an ethical, transparent, accountable, and responsible manner. The concept of corporate governance did not emerge suddenly, but developed through a long historical process shaped by economic transformation, institutional evolution, and corporate crises. Let's start with the pre-modern era, before the 1600s. At that time, business activities were small-scale and usually managed by individuals or families. The owner was also the manager, so there was no separation between ownership and control. As a result, conflicts of interest were minimal. This condition reflects what is known as stewardship theory, where managers are assumed to act in the best interests of the owners. One important development during this period was the emergence of the concept of separate legal entities in the Middle Ages. For example, 12th to 15th century, the guild system in Europe regulated trade activities. Next, we move to the emergence of pre-modern corporations in the 1600s. As global trade expanded, the need for capital increased. Investors began pooling resources. A well-known example is the Dutch East India Company, or VOC, established in 1602. It was the first company to issue shares to the public. This created a separation between ownership and management, which later led to what we call the agency problem. Finally, ever wondered how modern corporations began? The modern corporation developed rapidly from the 1800s to the 1920s. In the 1800s, the Industrial Revolution began transforming traditional businesses into large industries. By the 1850s, factory growth increased rapidly as production became more efficient. Entering the 1900s, large corporations started to emerge and dominate the economy. Then, in the 1920s, professional management systems became more common, marking the rise of the modern corporation. A modern corporation is a type of business entity that separates ownership from professional management. In this system, the owners or shareholders provide capital and own the company through shares, while professional managers are responsible for running daily business operations. Modern corporations also have their own legal identity, transferable shares, and limited liability for their owners. These characteristics make corporations more effective in managing large and complex businesses. Modern corporations have several important characteristics. First, separate legal personality, which means the company has its own legal identity. Second, transferable shares, meaning ownership can be transferred through shares. Third, perpetual existence, where the company continues to exist even if ownership changes. And finally, limited liability, which protects owners by limiting their responsibility to the amount they invest in the company. The concept of corporate governance did not emerge suddenly, but developed through a long historical process shaped by economic transformation, institutional evolution, and corporate crises. Next is the development of corporate governance theory. The term corporate governance gained wider recognition through the work of Robert Tricker, who defined it as the system by which companies are directed and controlled. Corporate governance regulates relationships between management, the board of directors, shareholders, and other stakeholders. Several theories explain corporate governance mechanisms. 1. Stewardship theory assumes managers act in the best interests of the company. 2. Agency theory emphasizes conflicts of interest between managers and shareholders. The concept of governance, risk, and compliance, or GRC, began developing rapidly in the early 2000s. In 2001, the Enron scandal exposed major weaknesses in corporate governance and internal controls. Then, in 2002, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was introduced to strengthen corporate accountability and financial transparency. In 2008, the global financial crisis highlighted the importance of effective risk management. Since then, many companies have integrated governance, risk, and compliance into a unified GRC system. So, what is GRC? GRC stands for Governance, Risk, and Compliance. It is a framework used by companies to ensure business operations run effectively, risks are properly managed, and regulations are followed. Through GRC, companies focus not only on achieving profit, but also on maintaining stability, accountability, and long-term sustainability. The main concept of GRC consists of three essential components: governance, risk, and compliance. First, governance refers to how the company is directed and managed. It includes organizational structures, decision-making processes, and oversight mechanisms to ensure goals are achieved effectively. Second, risk involves identifying, assessing, and controlling potential threats that may hinder objectives. Effective risk management helps minimize losses while maximizing opportunities. Third, compliance ensures the company adheres to laws, regulations, and standards. This protects the company's reputation and prevents legal penalties. Together, these three pillars create a strong framework that safeguards sustainability, integrity, and trust within the organization. Finally, we move to ESG. Today, corporate governance continues to evolve through the integration of environmental, social, and governance (ESG) principles. Companies are increasingly expected to consider environmental sustainability, social responsibility, and long-term value creation alongside financial performance. The development of corporate governance reflects the gradual strengthening of its core principles: transparency, accountability, responsibility, independence, and fairness, TARIF. These principles have been reinforced through historical experience, regulatory reform, and institutional development. Now we move to the TARIF principles. First, transparency. The importance of transparency became evident during the Great Depression of 1929. Many corporations provided misleading or insufficient financial information, contributing to investor losses and economic instability. In response, stricter financial disclosure regulations were introduced in the United States, such as the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. These regulations strengthened the principle of transparency in corporate reporting. Transparency became a core pillar of corporate governance to protect investors and restore public trust. Second, accountability and independence. In the early 1990s, corporate scandals in the United Kingdom raised concerns regarding accountability and board effectiveness. The Cadbury report emphasized the importance of independent directors, transparent financial reporting, and the separation of the roles of chairman and chief executive officer. The separation of these roles reinforced the principles of independence and accountability by reducing the concentration of power and enhancing oversight mechanisms within corporations. Third principle is responsibility. In the early 2000s, major scandals such as Enron and WorldCom exposed serious weaknesses in corporate governance and ethical standards. These cases involved financial manipulation and audit failures, causing massive investor losses. In response, the United States enacted the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, or SOX. The law strengthened internal controls, increased management responsibility for financial reporting, and reinforced auditor oversight. These reforms showed that effective corporate governance requires not only regulation, but also integrity and ethical leadership. The fourth principle is fairness, which emphasizes equal treatment of stakeholders. The OECD later developed global governance principles that became international references. In Indonesia, TARIF principles were formally adopted through the National Committee on Governance Policy, or KNKG. Key milestones included the initial Good Corporate Governance Guidelines in 1999. Recognition of TARIF principles in 2004. TARIF officially established as core principles in 2006. From ancient trade systems to modern global regulations, corporate governance continues to evolve to ensure transparency, accountability and independence, fairness, responsibility, and trust in business. The historical evolution of corporate governance demonstrates that governance systems are shaped by economic change, institutional innovation, and corporate crises. From early trade organizations to modern global corporations, governance mechanisms have continuously developed to address emerging risks and protect stakeholder interests. Corporate governance is not merely a regulatory requirement, but a fundamental framework for maintaining trust, ensuring sustainability, and promoting responsible corporate behavior in the modern economy. All right, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and hopefully this video was helpful. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for content. See you, and have a nice day, guys.